And he never knew. And the girl kept this bad thing locked in her heart. That would be all right, wouldn't it?
Do you want my advice?
Oh, yes, please.
Go back to Bulgaria.
Go back to Bulgaria. Words of advice from Rick Blaine, portrayed by Humphrey Bogart in the 1942 classic, Casablanca. For those unfamiliar, the film is set during the Second World War, when people desperate to escape a Europe dominated by Nazi Germany fled through the North African port city of Casablanca, then under the control of Vichy France. In that scene, a newlywed woman from Bulgaria presents a real, not hypothetical, moral dilemma to Rick, the owner of the city's best-known nightclub that also has an underground casino. She and her husband are desperate to flee to America, but have run out of money along the way and can't afford their exit visas. Captain Renault, the local official, has offered them a way out, but at a steep price. A favor reserved for spouses, or in short, adultery. The young woman, torn and anxious, asks Rick whether it would be okay if she gave in, under the rationale that she would be acting for the sake of both of them and not a selfish desire, and that she would never ever tell her husband. Would it be okay then? Rick's first answer? Go back to Bulgaria. His second answer? Well, stick around to the end to find out, if you haven't already seen it. More importantly, this scene raises a profound question. Why do both Rick and the young woman know that deep down the justification she offers, a cold utilitarian calculation of right and wrong, is not a convincing or satisfying reason to give in to the cruel demand of Captain Renault? After all, there is no shortage of people in the world today who would be happy to argue that there's nothing more to the physical realm than random atoms bouncing around in the void, devoid of any significance whatsoever. And yet, I bet that most of us also instinctively sense there's something deeply wrong with the situation. So why is that?
Why? Why?
There are many reasons, in fact too many to completely cover in just this video, but one of the most critical, and at the same time the most ignored, has to do with the social nature of intemperance. For anyone I might have just lost, intemperance refers to personal desire without moderation, like when we're addicted to food or social media. Importantly, while it is rooted in our personal lives, intemperance inevitably affects the people around us, often the people we care about most. This is why the young woman and Rick both know deep down that adultery was wrong, even if her husband never found out about it. It also suggests that there is more to the human person than the physical, and more even than our own consciousness. Ultimately, it seems that both the young woman and Rick agree implicitly that Captain Renault is acting antisocially, and it would be wrong to cooperate with him. In other words, Captain Renault is attacking the well-being of the people around him for the sake of his personal pleasure. It sounds like a bold claim. Are Rick and the young woman right, though? Is there a sense in which even the most private acts are never merely private and always have a social dimension, whether or not we want to admit it? To really get to the bottom of that question, we first need to get to the bottom of these questions. First, how is intemperance dangerous on the personal level? And second, how is intemperance dangerous to society as a whole? So, to start with the first question, why is intemperance, specifically unchastity, dangerous on the personal level? To start to answer that question, I found it very helpful to look to the work of the 20th century German philosopher Josef Pieper. For Pieper, the importance of virtue is not merely some lofty ideal. Rather, he claims that, in particular, intemperance is corrosive on our ability to perceive reality as it truly is. He writes, "The destructiveness lies in the fact that unchastity constricts man and thus renders him incapable of seeing objective reality. An unchaste man wants above all something for himself. He is distracted by an unobjective interest. His constantly strained will to pleasure prevents him from confronting reality with that selfless detachment which alone makes genuine knowledge possible." St. Thomas here uses the comparison of a lion who, at the sight of a stag, is unable to perceive anything but the anticipated meal. In an unchaste heart, attention is not merely fixed upon a certain track, but the window of the soul has lost its transparency, that is, its capacity for perceiving existence, as if a selfish interest had covered it, as it were, with a film of dust. We cannot repeat too often, only he who is silent hears. Pieper's point is clear. Unchastity, and intemperance more broadly, blinds us. We see the world through the lens of our desires, rather than our whole intellect, distorting the world into what we want it to be, rather than what it actually is. It's like having a virtual reality headset on that you can never take off. This is critical for Pieper because true knowledge is the foundation of good decision-making, and good decision-making, or prudence, is the most essential of all the virtues. In other words, because unchastity limits our ability to perceive reality, in turn it damages our ability to reflect on reality and thoughtfully navigate our life in the world. Without clear vision, prudence is impossible, and without prudence, every other virtue is in danger. But even beyond the realm of the practical and the everyday, which prudence governs, our capacity for higher level contemplation, like in science and philosophy, is also damaged. This is why Pieper argues that chastity, a subspecies of temperance which optimizes our sexual desires, actually grants a certain type of freedom. He writes, "Chastity realizes in the province of sex the order which corresponds to the truth of the world, and of man both as experienced and as revealed, and which accords with the twofold form of this truth, not that of unveiled evidence alone, but of veiled evidence also, that is, of mystery." In short, while the unchaste person becomes totally absorbed in their private self-centered desires, the chaste person is actually free to experience the world fully. To be honest, it kind of reminds me of a scene from a more recent classic. Okay, so now we know why intemperance, and specifically unchastity, is not good at the personal level. But what about society as a whole? What does it really matter what adults do in their private lives? Well, to start, it's obviously not good for a society if everybody is lost in their own private worlds, constantly pursuing every sexual desire. Adultery, of course, is one of the most obvious examples of how unchastity can attack the social fabric. After all, it undermines marriages, and marriages are essential for raising children, and the raising of children is necessary to ensure the continuation of civilization and avoid the collapse of society. But beyond adultery, there's unfortunately no shortage of other examples of unchaste and intemperate desires that can be destructive. Indeed, the problem is bigger than any single example. When we begin to treat other people as mere objects for our use, like toys on a shelf, we erode the foundations of trust, respect, and mutual responsibility that hold together a society. Not so good. And beyond even that, Pieper argues there is an even greater danger, which lies hiding in the fact that these behaviors are in some sense contagious, creating literally a vicious cycle. As he writes, "Intemperance is enkindled above all by the seductive glamour of the stimuli provided in an artificial civilization, with which the dishonorable team of blind lust and calculated greed surround the province of sexuality. All training and self-discipline aiming at chastity will find itself constantly faced with this situation." In other words, intemperance breeds intemperance. Once you're on Mr. Bones' wild ride, it's hard to get off. In particular, once unchastity spreads widely in private, it may not be too long before it's publicly accepted and even promoted. And once we reach that stage, the negative effects can quickly become dizzying. Ultimately for Pieper, the consequences are nothing short of incredibly dire. He writes, "Only the combination of the intemperateness of lustfulness with the lazy inertia incapable of generating anger is the sign of complete and virtually hopeless degeneration. It appears whenever a caste, a people, or a whole civilization is ripe for its decline and fall." I think by now we can see why Pieper argues that while unchastity might seem like a private affair, it is actually anything but. Pieper isn't arguing that we must personally pursue and publicly promote chastity simply to follow arbitrary societal norms. Rather, for Pieper, marriage is a real public good, since it is critical for the raising of children, and the raising of offspring are in turn critical for the continuation of civilization. Since unchastity weakens society's capacity for good marriages, unchastity also offends justice, the virtue which concerns how we treat others, in addition to temperance and prudence, as already mentioned. Before we wrap up, I do want to quickly add on one more point that I think can add some helpful context. Pieper doesn't argue that unchastity is the worst vice, but he is concerned that it is one of the most common, which is why we need to be aware of the long-term dangers at the level of society. Indeed, Pieper finds a paradox in the modern world. On one hand, we seem to be obsessed with sexuality, injecting it into all sorts of things unnecessarily, often just for the sake of money, but on the other, we are quick to reduce it to something dirty or evil. For Pieper, this mindset is actually nothing new, and it actually springs up from time to time in religious groups like the Manichees or the Cathars that held that the body and everything related to it was corrupted and evil. For him, however, the life of virtue includes the human body. As he writes, "And therefore man's virtue requires that the will for just retribution reside not only in the spiritual realm of the soul, but also in sensuality and in the body itself. The surprise with which we reflect on these statements makes us aware, once again, how far we are from considering the whole man in our conception of the mortal good. We realize how much we almost unconsciously tend to take the purely spiritual for actual humanity. How much, on the other hand, the ancients can teach us and make us once again embrace the full created nature of world and man in its true reality. And elsewhere he adds, because the nature of man is composed of body and soul, of spirit and sensuality, it belongs to the good of man to devote himself utterly to virtue, with spirit, sensuality, and body alike. Okay, so with all that said, I think it's time to wrap this video up. We saw that intemperance, and specifically unchastity, can be deeply antisocial because first, they undermine the person's ability to see reality as it is and act prudently, and second, because they gradually destroy the strong foundation on which the future of every civilization rests: good marriages. So, whatever happened to the newlywed couple in Casablanca? I guess I might have to make a video about lying next.
On paye en plein le 8. Do you wish to place another bet, sir?
No, I guess not.
Have you tried 22 tonight? I said 22.
Marquons les jeux, mesdames et messieurs. Les jeux sont faits, la partie continue. Marquons les jeux. Fini. 22. Noir, pair et passe. 22.
Leave it there.
Marquons les jeux, mesdames et messieurs. Les jeux sont faits. Marquons les jeux, la partie continue. Marquons les jeux sont faits. Rien ne va plus. 22, noir, pair et passe.
Cash it in and don't come back.
Rien ne va plus, monsieur. Fini.
So are you sure this place is honest?
Honest as a day is long.
Until next time, friends.